Well, good afternoon. I want to echo remarks earlier in terms of the setting, the audience, the participation, the distinguished guests. Thank the Canadians for hosting today. It's wonderful being here on Canadian soil, in the shadow of the U.S. government, across the river from the Pentagon, just upstream of the Naval Research Lab. Outstanding setting. Tremendous gathering. I was told by Admiral Winter that when I depart here this afternoon and return to the Pentagon, the IQ of both locations will rise. Some get it quicker than others. But welcome to Washington. Outside of this enclave of truly scientific, technical genius here in this room, the city of Washington, D.C., lawyers outnumber engineers and scientists about 1,000 to 1, which is why here in D.C., sound does travel faster than the speed of light. If you work with the press, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to try to not retread frankly, the outstanding lessons from both of you gentlemen. I embrace your words. I think there's something though that of historical significance I would like to share with you all. This occasion, it is a celebration of the role of science in rolling back the great darkness that engulfed the world in the middle of the last century. And it's a celebration in honor of a group of unlikely heroes with names like Tizard, Bowen, Watson Watt, Randall, Boot, Henderson, Bush, Compton, Loomis. Giants of science whose inventive genius would prove to be the stuff of victory in their war. And it's a celebration of the great alliance formed by Churchill, Roosevelt, and Mackenzie King, the leaders of the free world, who, as much by their will as by their abilities, would win not just the war, but the peace that followed. And perhaps most importantly, it's a celebration of that storied, special relationship that we English-speaking peoples share alone. Now, it's difficult to imagine the dire circumstances that would motivate the leader of a great nation to dispatch his trusted advisors, carrying with them his country's greatest secrets, unguarded, to another country an ocean away. But by August of 1940, France had fallen. Germany had selected landing places on the southern coast of England for Operation Sea Lion, its final push to total victory in Europe. And Britain's fate now depended upon victory in the air as the Battle of Britain raged in the skies over London. And as Winston Churchill, his long cigar in mouth, leaning forward on his stout walking stick, peered beneath the rim of his helmet across St. James Park to where fire and smoke billowed from the roof of the Carlton House terrace. And as the sound of exploding shells and anti-aircraft fire filled the air, above the noise and confusion, Churchill would be heard crying out in anger, "By God, we will get the bastards for this." Such were the circumstances. And while the Battle of Britain was being fought by ear and by eye, a race for scientific discovery was being contested in laboratories in England and Germany to develop a radio beam that could pierce cloud and fog and dark of night to guide airmen with precision to their targets. And the winner of this race would ultimately rule the skies over Europe. Churchill himself summed up the significance of this great scientific effort in a chapter titled The Wizard War, in a book simply titled Alone, in the volume Their Finest Hour of his history of the Second World War. During the human struggle between the British and German air forces, he wrote, between pilot and pilot, between ruthless bombing and the fortitude of the British people, another conflict was going on, step by step, month by month. This was a secret war, whose battles were lost or won unknown to the public, and only with difficulty comprehended even now to those outside the small, high scientific circles concerned. No such warfare had ever been waged by mortal men. The terms in which it could be recorded or talked about were unintelligible to ordinary folk. Yet, if we had not mastered its profound meaning and used its mysteries, even while we saw them only in a glimpse, all the efforts, all the prowess of the fighting airmen, all the bravery and sacrifices of the people would have been in vain. Unless British science had proven superior to German, and unless its strange, sinister resources had been effectively brought to bear on the struggle for survival, we might well have been defeated, and, being defeated, destroyed. Tizard's mission was a bold move at that turning point in history. And on this side of the Atlantic, it was a great leap forward in technology. It was a shot in the arm to a country that feigned neutrality while Britain stood alone. And it emboldened Roosevelt, such that shortly after Tizard's mission, as the Blitz raged, President Roosevelt would go before the American people in one of his famous fireside chats. The people of Europe, he said, who are defending themselves, do not ask us to do their fighting. They ask us for the implements of war, which will enable them to fight for their liberty and for our security. Great Britain and the British Empire are today the spearhead of resistance to world conquest. They are putting up a fight which will live forever in the story of human gallantry. An American industrial genius, unmatched throughout the world in the solution of production problems, has been called upon to bring its resources and its talent into action. I want to make clear that it is the purpose of the nation to build now with all possible speed every machine, every arsenal, every factory that we need to manufacture defense material. We must be the great arsenal of democracy. We have furnished the British great material support, and we will furnish far more in the future. There will be no bottlenecks in our determination to aid Great Britain. No dictator, no combination of dictators will weaken our determination. We must apply ourselves to our task with the same resolution, the same sense of urgency, the same spirit of patriotism and sacrifice as we would if we were at war. Of course, what followed from the Tizard mission, from developments in radar, the proximity fuse, aircraft engines, synthetic rubber, nuclear research, all contributed to final victory in that war. Equally, or more important, what followed in the course of these past 75 years, from winning the Cold War to today's struggle against terrorism, the trust and cooperation and mutual respect that was sparked during that first encounter by those giants of science has continued to grow and, to this day, underpins that storied relationship we enjoy, and with that, the strategic alliance that we so greatly rely upon. Today, there are innumerable technical exchange agreements between our countries that span the full spectrum of science and technology, research and development, production and testing, operations and support. We share information and technologies and facilities. No greater example than ONR's global office in London. We train together and exchange personnel. I was fortunate to enjoy 2 years of exchange with the Canadian Navy in Ottawa. And of course, dating to Tizard's mission, we share our nation's greatest secrets. We do so, yes, because we have a common heritage, but more importantly, because we have a common belief in our free in democratic society. And we know that by way of our exchange, our way of life is made more prosperous, more secure. And so, I argue that we need to do all within our power to encourage, to enrich, to further collaboration on critical technologies, and to be wary of any barriers that would slow the transfer of knowledge between us. Our greatest programs today are, in fact, common, joint between us. There is perhaps no greater example of collaboration than that between Great Britain and the United States with our respective sea-based strategic deterrence submarine programs, Ohio and Vanguard, a common strategic weapon system, a shared industrial base, and the exchange of design and technology, technology that traces back to the Tizard Mission itself. They're all the hallmarks of these highly successful programs that gird our national security. Similar could be said regarding the partnership between the US, the UK, and Canada in the development of the Joint Strike Fighter program. The example, however, that I would like to leave you with this morning is that of the Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected Vehicle, or MRAP, in the IED defeat program. When the insurgency erupted after the fall of Iraq, and the improvised explosive device emerged as the #1 threat to our troops in theater, and the search for counter-IED technologies became the highest priority in the Department of Defense. Great Britain, which had suffered dearly by this threat in decades prior, sent a mission to the US to share their knowledge, their technology, their practices and procedures on how to defeat the IED. And as we sit here today, we are again greatly in debt to our ally for the untold American lives you have helped save by your willingness to share your greatest secrets with America. A century before the first flight of the airplane, before the truly mind-boggling expansion of technology of the last century, French philosopher Madame de Staël remarked that scientific progress makes moral progress a necessity. We are reminded of the truth of de Staël's words as we consider the devastation of that great war, Tizard's War, in the last century, and two, when we consider the tragic events in Paris just this past week. I believe that the strength of our relationship, the principles that we value, and the exchange that occurs between the greatest minds of our countries advances both the science and the morality of our world. So, in the words of Franklin Roosevelt, let's continue to apply ourselves to our task with the same resolution, the same sense of urgency, the same spirit of patriotism and sacrifice as we would show were we at war. Thank you.